Got it? Got it. We're also recording. Oh. Hey, everybody. There we go. I'm not there anymore. That's fine. I can see you. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to start again. This is Dave Backer, and it's the December Omaha Linux User Group for 2021. And this is going to be a short one tonight. We're going to go through a couple of short topics, and then we're probably going to socialize for a little while. The first announcement I have is that I'm going to post the call for speakers this week. We have a speaker for February, but we don't have one yet for January that I'm aware of. So when you see that on the mail list, or when you see that on Discord, please see if you could pop in there and fill in a topic for me. As I've said, it's about, we usually go 30 minutes or so for a presentation, and we cover anything in Linux and open source. We've done everything from Ansible to model railroading and everything in between. So it's a great time to have some fun. If you present a security topic and you're using, if you have a Security Plus, you can get an hour worth of continuing education. So that's my pitch. Let's see. Let's start with the month of the news of the month. So that covered right over the top of mine. Okay, so is that great? And I went backward too fast. Just backwards. Okay. All right. So the headline says that Rust is going to be a second language for the Linux kernel. And this is the email from Miguel Ojeda, who came out December 6th, so just yesterday, saying that the next patches coming in will have support for Rust. It's expected that most of the things that'll be tackled first will be drivers, because as Ojeda says, drivers are the leaves of the tree of the kernel. And I'm not sure whether Linus Torvald, I don't think he hates it. I don't know if he likes it. So, but he's allowing. So we'll see what happens. All right, the next one. Oops, stop.
Well, you just said a second, but a second.
Yes.
For those who may not know, can you explain what you mean by second?
Up to this point, C has been the only language in the Linux kernel. So, yeah, it is a big change. Okay, CentOS Stream 9 arrives a few days ago. They're using Fedora 34 packages, and they're putting them into CentOS, and they're creating the CentOS 9 release. Rich Bowen, who's one of the publicist kind of guys who hangs around with CentOS, says The aim is for CentOS stream to be as fundamentally stable as RHEL itself. I'm not sure that's going to happen since it's leading edge ahead of Red Hat, but keep a happy thought. Yeah. So now it's Fedora to CentOS to Red Hat, and then we have a couple of other
triumvirate.
Yeah.
Or the minor leagues, the minor leagues, and the major leagues.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think of Fedora as a minor league.
No. But sometimes the AA games are so much nicer than the majors.
Oh, that's true. Okay. New malware, cronrat. So it's scheduled. If you look at it when it installs itself, it says that it's going to run on February 31st, and that's kind of a smoke screen. It's got the ability to put in some malicious payloads and evades detection for security software because cron is fine, right? So I don't know what patches have been looked or have been looked to fix the problem, but we'll see. This is not a joke. February 31st.
How long is that moment going on?
I saw this. I pulled this article from last week. So Hacker News. So I don't think it's very long.
How does it get in?
I don't know.
Any known associated packages or websites that the RAD, a sophisticated bash program, also uses many levels of obfuscation to make analysis difficult, such as placing code behind encoding and compression barriers, implementing a custom binary protocol, random checksums, slip past firewalls and packet inspectors, before establishing communications with flow control server to create further instructions. Armed with this backdoor access, the attackers associated with cronrat can run any code on the compromised system.
So remember trying to stop that in a bunch of cloud VMs. That's
manually checking your contact to people, right? Making sure you don't have some job schedule 1, 2, 3, 30. Yeah, it does. It says cronrat adds a number of tasks to crontab with a curious date specification 52, 23, 31, 2, 3, 3 searches to 20. These lines are syntactically valid, but will generate a runtime error when executed. However, this will never happen as they're scheduled to run on February 3rd. That just means you can't change it. That was probably part of the test. Digital skimming is moving from the browser to the server, and this is yet another example. Most online stores have only implemented browser-based defenses and criminals capitalize on the backend. Professionals should really consider full attack surface. Well, any good ones do. Which is why you don't put out accounts and
Oops. The last of the SCO versus IBM Linux has been settled, supposedly. Last week or 2 weeks ago, the judge said that everything has been settled and I am closing the action. From when I was trying to read, I couldn't tell whether IBM gave $14.5 million to the bankruptcy people from SCO, or it was the other way around. So, but supposedly there is no more litigation. It's been a long 2000s, in the 2000s when this started. So it's been a zombie.
I think we first mentioned the lawsuit on OS News back in 2003. The then current version of the next kernel was 2.4, 2.5.
It's a long time ago. And last and not least, oh, I did it backwards. How did I do that? Oh, did I?
Well, it's important to mention that again.
Okay, maybe I'm done.
Keep going.
Maybe I'm done.
Oh, and you got it.
I am done. I think I had another one, but that's okay. All right, so that's the news. Anybody else have any exciting news that I missed?
Railline beta hit the streets about a week ago.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
No one else knew better than they because she had it. A long, trustworthy letter done. And was last winter. Firefox light block light is dying at the end of the month. So time to start moving your accounts to get more in or last pass, et cetera. If you're using Wi-Fi, these services that so the syncing they had is all gone. Like looks like sync your bookmarks, and I think the problem was being on Firefox Center. So anybody who's getting across browser, they're going to go to something like December 13th or LastPass, right? You have a niche market people who use Firefox. Yeah, they have really nice. Always cool with little projects. Relatively high. Their send feature where you can just make like send. There's been miles.
And that disappeared.
Yeah. Firefox Center probably the next part.
Okay. Okay. Well, I don't, do any of you guys have a topic tonight? Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do mine. And if anybody else is inspired or whatever, wants to one-up me, then you are welcome to do that. Okay. So 5 things I loved about 2021 in Linux and open source, not in the rest of it necessarily. So number 5, Raspberry Pi 4. I finally decided that I was going to stop running a 2005 Dell mini computer, a small form factor computer, to run my, the front end of my home lab. And so I bit the bullet and got a Pi 4 with 8 gig. And I've been extremely happy. It will handle limited video. If I'm doing a how-to on YouTube, no problem. I wouldn't exactly try and watch movies on it. Browsing is fine. Don't try and open 20 tabs. And you'll do just great. And the terminals are fine too. I like the double monitor. Set that up. That was easy to set up. It sips power compared to what I had before. And I know compared to what I do on hypervisors, it's not like I'm a lot of power conservation, but some helps. I'd buy more if I could find them, but I don't think it'll be a struggle to get any stuff this year, I think, until maybe the second half of this year. Because of various supply chains and an extremely high demand. Whoop, I did that again. There we go. Okay, Jeff Geerling's YouTube channel. Jeff used to be, well, Jeff started out, he wrote one of the original books on Ansible, and he was a long-term contractor for Red Hat. And I think maybe a year or a little more than that ago, he decided to step away from Red Hat. And he started doing these videos on Raspberry Pis. And anything that plugs into a Raspberry Pi hat, a compute, I don't know,
Compute module.
yeah, compute module for host boards, all kinds of stuff. There have been wacky things like he booted up 20 hard drives through one of them, and he's done some surgery. But the great thing is as he goes through and finds things like problems in drivers or what status a particular board is, he's got on his blog, he's tracking all that stuff. So you can find out, I was interested in this thing. Well, where is it? Okay, this one's in crowdfunding. It will end in June of 2022. This is in production. We haven't seen it yet, you know. So he's tracking all these boards, which is great. He's very no nonsense about the production. It's great information. Doesn't go through a lot of, you know, mash that button to subscribe. And not a lot of silly music and stuff like that. However, he can be very fun. There's a couple of those videos in there that have just been hilarious. You should always wait for the outtakes. So I really enjoy him. VimDiff. Yeah, I know. People know what VimDiff is. I haven't used it much, but in the last couple of months, I've been in a lot of stare and compare tasks. People give me files. I have to go look at the other file that it's going to go overwrite. Can I do that? Can I not do that? What's changing? So I've learned to love VimDiff. I don't know why I didn't use it sooner, but it's great.
What's the difference between VimDiff and just regular diff? Regular comparing text files?
VimDiff throws up a window with your first parameter on the left and your right parameter on the second, and it will show compared to A what was added or what was removed from B, side by side.
But you get all these Vim commands, right?
Yeah.
That's a big difference. So, and just to extend on that, there's a diff program called SDiff. So if you're on the command line and you don't need the power of them, you can do an SDiff, and by default, it'll scroll both files side by side, and you'll have a bar between those on the line that are actually deltas. Okay, and so you do like an SDiff file, A file, you type less, and now you can tab through it. But then if you want the power of DI to get in there, I'm guessing you can jump into an edit mode and jump back out, then you can let it. Okay, I guess I could try that. Cool enough to meet all the functionality.
It's just You know, I was sitting there with a coworker, and he said, you know, I'm running diff and trying to parse through the pluses and the minuses. Try Vim diff.
Does that handle 3 files?
I haven't tried it.
But you could, it's really does.
If I had a big enough monitor.
It really does it from the wrapper when you know that a great job at preparing 3 files.
Okay, so Vim diff and SDiff, SDiff are something you guys should look into. All right. So number 2, Rocky Linux. When CentOS decided to go into a streaming updates, there were 2 companies that stepped up right away to take over a, as they say, bit or bug for bug compatibility with the latest released Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So I've used Alma Linux a little bit, but I kind of like, you know, I kind of like to hang out with projects that have a lot of fun community around them. And Rocky Linux has been a lot of fun that way. So it's working great. That's my standard Linux server, and for Linux servers and VMs. And they seem pretty stable financially. They've gotten plenty of donations and plenty of grants. And I think they're going to be around for a while. Number 1, Proxmox. So a couple of my servers are old enough that they are no longer supported by VMware. And at that point, I wasn't working in a job that uses VMware. So I thought, well, okay, I've used Red Hat Enterprise virtualization, and I'm not a fan, really. So I think I'll try this. And it's great. It's been very solid. There are a ton of features. I have only probably scratched the surface on those. I do lots of foolish to VMs, and I've only broken it once. I made a VM that I couldn't shut down. So I actually, but the thing is, you can, it's Debian underneath, so you just hop in there on the command line, find the right command, and blow it away that way. That's templating, clustering, containers. They're not Docker containers. It's LXC, I think. Yeah, and I haven't tried the containers yet. That's going to be my hypervisor for stuff. Now, it turns out I got a new job, and once again, VMware. So I probably will be picking up a couple of more compatible servers for VMware, and I'll be using VMware in a lab series, but I'm planning on anything that I put up in the house that's going to stay up for a while. I'm going to probably keep on Proxmox. So I would highly recommend it. And honorable mention, Open Media Vault. Once again, I've got a very basic NFS setup, but it's worked well. I've had questions. People have answered them nicely. There are so many plugins for that thing. There are backup plugins. There's Docker. There's Sonar, Radar, all those things. And I'll be continuing to learn new features. I have a grand plan to hopefully resuscitate one of my really big old computers and turn it into a very, a high capacity NAS during this year. And that's it. Thank you. Have a happy holiday. Anybody else want to take over?
I'm working. I'm almost done.
He's almost done.
I started when you started. Any closer to your, process?
No, I need one. I'm gonna build the third one.
You do if you know closer.
Yeah, but
I'm running a tune closer and virtual machine side. Running 406 to maintain quant.
oh, okay.
So I had to get.
One of those deals.
Had to get corn, man. That's the one I mentioned you take a look at?
I might have. I've heard a couple of people talking. Yeah, I mean,
I love Rockford.
it's amazing.
Okay. I'll have your presentation.
All right, I'm stopping to share.
And
John is
go
going to
ahead and
start.
share your feed. Your browser, go back to your. Make that sound up. Go up to your Google Drive. Share.
Third one down, shared with me.
Put mine right there.
Ah, okay,
I'm just gonna use your computer
okay.
since mine's recording.
And go.
I'm gonna share the screen.
Have to get back to it. There we go. And I want that one. And okay.
Great. I just made this. So you want us to heckle on yours?
You betcha.
Yeah.
I don't care if you heckle me or not. It happens, right?
It does.
All right. Well, I'm glad Louis is here. Because this presentation was helpful by Louis. So in the middle of the pandemic, I decided to start to do some module work. And you'll see a number of modules here. This is for a Raspberry Pi telescope interface. You've got a GPS module. This is the real-time clock. This is a BME 280. We did not use that. That's temperature, humidity, pressure. And that is an OLED screen. So essentially, I pre-wired up all the wires because the space I was going to work with was very small. So one of the people who worked on this project that posted it online had a 3D printed design, but I had to make the case taller because I had so many components in it. So I had to reslice the bottom components to make it taller to fit things in. I also threw a heat sink in on the processor for that. That was a lot of fun. And you could essentially melt these tabs on the OLED to hold it in there if you wanted. Here's the OLED screen. It's hot glued in. There's a liberal amount of Kapton tape because the GPS module is going to sit right on top of it. This, I believe, I also put hot glue on it to get it in there. And as you can see, there's my finger, how big this thing is, right? Working with that confined space was not always easy to do. This was my initial idea for the BME 280. Put it outside the case so that I wouldn't have to deal with the inside case temperatures, because it'd be kind of nice to know what the temperature is. However, it's a lot to deal with on the SCA and SCL or I2C lines with all these modules, trying to wire them all up together because they all talk at the same time.
So I decided to omit that module. So the case still has a hole for it, and it's still on my workbench. I just never put it in. But the clock has a little tiny battery in it. And here's it's starting to go all together to fit it all in. I had to use it. I had a little circuit board reference for my pins.
Gauge wire is that?
It's fairly thin. Right. It was wire I bought to do a keyboard wire. So it's probably 20 or 22. It was pretty small. I had like bought a box and they're all spools you pull out. At least I got all different colors this time. Sometimes they're not always that beneficial. So there's some more Captain tape in there too. But here's all the testing period. I figured I'd plug it in outside because I can't plug certain things in when it's in. I can't do HDMI in the case because it's not supposed to have HDMI. It's supposed to be headless, right? Except headless means you have an OLED screen and you want scripts to be able to put out your lat long and date and time. Now, I should have really wired this up before I went out because this was in September and you may notice that the date is wrong. It's supposed to at least, it syncs with NTP when it's on a network. It's not on a network, it's supposed to use the GPS. It's not using the GPS to find its time. I gotta fix that. But this was just this last September. And thanks to Louis, he helped me get all this formatting done for the lat and long and some of the math division for that. So it just runs off of the battery pack, or I can run it off the scope mount. And it plugs directly into the telescope and control. There are some scripts in the project that I originally looked at, where it'll push the date and the time and the lat and long into the telescope to try to shorten your setup time. Otherwise, you're sitting there putting it all in. This looks fairly bright here. It is not that bright. The camera is compensating for it. It is really dim, but you don't want a lot of light when you're using it. So it was a fun little project. I need to get back into it and fix a little issues, but other than that, it works. I have not done the Bluetooth yet to use the PlayStation controller to control the telescope. Yes.
And what is its reason? What does it do to the telescope?
I wanted to put in the location and the date.
So it does feed the lat long and
Yes.
date time to the telescope.
I have to go in and log in and manually do it. So I haven't gotten that. It'd be better if it would do it automatically. Although it doesn't seem to do the scripts that I told it to start off with, do it.
So there's still just a little programming problem.
Yes. For the Raspberry Pi to see the telescope, you have to power on the scope first. No. Yeah. The serial port's not going to exist on Linux unless it's powered up, right? You have to plug it in first, get the telescope up, and then you boot this.
So the telescope has a serial port?
It does.
Okay. And
it's essentially a one-wire serial port, not unlike how some weather stations are. So the devices kind of all have to get their own serial address to talk to each other. This goes back a long time ago. That's how everyone did it. Some scopes used to have a 9-pin RS-232. They switched to a RJ12 or that was some are 12, some are 11. It depends. So it's like handset cord or phone cord, and it was like a flat cable that the components would talk to each other. Just case in point, Celestron sells a GPS module for $400, or maybe it was 200. I think it's 200. It's not cheap. This is much cheaper. Since I did this project, there's been a whole new one that somebody has put together that is a lot more capable than what I made. So I'm debating whether to use his. He's using an ESP8266, and it's automatic, all automatic. He even has enable and disable buttons for the Wi-Fi or the Bluetooth, so you can talk to it either way. And the scope doesn't know any different. It looks just like another device on there. For instance, there's a product called Sky-Fi. It's like $130 for a Wi-Fi adapter for some telescopes. Yeah, it's not altogether cheap. There's another device called a StarSense that you could buy, and it actually looks at the sky and tells you where you are. That's almost $500. When your smartphone could do it if it had the capability to plug in directly. It's interesting. But the guy who's the new one, that 8266, you can download the Gerber files to have your own boards made. So you can just wire it up with all the components and you have it, which is nice. Because it looks like a component that it was made for. There's some cases out there that make it look like a Celestron part. Celestron sells a telescope system called the StarSense Explorer. It's an app you put on your phone. It attaches to the telescope and there's a mirror. So the camera looks at the mirror, which looks at the sky. And it looks at the stars and figures out where you are and where you point it. The app has a code that you can only use 5 times. It's like you could move it to a new device 5 times. It would be nice if they just released the technology, but not so much.
There's like a general random question. I think it's not much of it, but why do you need the GPS coordinates from here? Or using
If you have a go-to system where the telescope is motorized to go to a target specifically, it needs to know the date and time and where you are located to look at that specific item.
Oh.
So you can train the telescope when you set up. It just takes longer. But you still align it to stars so it knows where you are. It's just, it takes long. It's like the setup time, right? It's like 15 minutes versus 30 minutes. But some of us are a lot more experienced and can do it a lot faster than me. Although it's not too bad, it's just.
And your scope is all path too, right?
Yes, and not equatorial, it's all paths.
Yeah,
The math.
How the motor drives have to change how fast they go in this direction and that direction. For equatorial, as you said, you can use one motor at a constant speed. But without that, then you need two motors at varying speeds.
So it gets,
Being able to get the location allows you to map into the universal.
there is a project called OpenStep that some people have been working on, and it uses a lot of these boards that we're familiar with, ESP8266, the STM boards, 3D printer controller boards, because you've got two motor controls, right? Telescope has two motors.
Makes sense.
So they're reusing printer boards to control telescopes, and it's pretty fancy how they've done it.
That's my mind. Polarized telescope. Let me know if you're interested in.
Okay, so here's the website. Open source, configurability, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and it works with a lot of very good open source software. How to build your own, different boards. There's a lot of ads on this site. So yeah, I mean, you can do it for basically 50 bucks. And I've seen people who've taken the boards out of their existing mounts and put new boards in. So like Skywatcher has an HEQ5 that's just a popular mount. And they've removed the controller board and put a whole new board in it, just so that they could use OpenStep to talk to it and control it. So they're replacing the internal brains. But there are some things that do get a little bit complicated. PEC, which is periodic error correction, can get into your mount and cause some issues with tracking because it, expands over time, right? That has to do with how the worm drive usually spins. If it's off, then your error gets, yeah. But it's fascinating to see. I don't know if they have a gallery or not. What a weird looking website. Next step. Do you remember Next Step? From Steve Jobs? Yeah. So there's it's got a interface box and a motor instead of belt to control the telescope mount as an equatorial mount. So he's using, looks like NEMA 17 motors. Most common motors you find on 3D printers as well. So not bad for homebrew. It's a little sped up, but yeah. That program is Sky Safari.
Somebody who's usually trying to target objects by hand. The object moves and trying to move it with it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It can get a little, it depends. Some people like the slow, I shouldn't say slow. They like the hands-on feel, right? Some individuals, they just have motor drive in one direction just to counter the Earth rotation. That's it. There's a going along, one of the earliest add-ons to telescopes were digital setting circles. So they tell you where you're pointing in the sky. and it's just a readout that shows you where you're looking. Well, if you have a chart that says where something will be at a certain time, you just say, okay, it's going to be here, set the circles, you're there, right? There have been many different computer assisted components. So for instance, there's one called Sky Commander. Oops, sorry, Dave. So this is the Sky Commander. You're like, wow, that's just looks like a little box to interface, and that is true. That's it. You select the object you want, you say go, and these arrows tell you what direction to move your telescope. And when these reach 0, you're on your target. There's at least a name, so Andromeda and 31. It's a neat box. That's my first box that I used for digital setting circles. There are many different ones that you can get, Argo Novus and all that, and they each have their own complexity. This one's nice. It'll run off of a 9-volt battery. Oops, thanks Windows. It'll run off of a 9-volt battery, or if you plug in a 12-volt supply, the screen will light up for long periods, rather than just when you do the key press. This version is firmware upgradable. The previous versions were not. So you could actually upload new catalogs into it. Still can't tell myself to sell it. It's such a nice little, I mean, it's like this big. The other ones are like this. But you can buy an entire kit to retrofit any telescope to use it, pretty much. Most telescopes. There are kits for different ones. Here's the encoder and cable connectors. So the RJ45 goes out to your 2 axes. So that's how it reads from the encoder. And then you have the serial port. So if you want to hook it up to a computer, you can. There's a software package called ASCOM for astronomy communication, essentially. It is a Windows program. Just having ASCOM on your system doesn't mean that you could talk to a telescope. You have to have the driver for your specific telescope. I find ASCOM a bit confusing, just because there's so many things you have to add into a system to use it. There is an open source project called INDI, I-N-D-I, which has kind of come forward a lot to interfacing telescopes. So those are also available. And I wanted to talk Linux to that. But you essentially have to use the adapter like, you know, the rollover cables for Cisco equipment that goes to the DB9, the RJ45. It's essentially you're taking the serial out here, plugging into one of those, and you gotta put it in a USB adapter. Yeah, it gets a bit complicated. Yeah. There, that's how to make your cable. It's only 3 wires. What's that?
It's about to have a flash mix.
Yeah.
Easier to make a Cisco cable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just buy those.
True, we have to really. That's right.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Not bad for throwing that together.
That is a premium tag, telescope, encoder,
Works. Does anybody else have anything?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Once.
Does anyone here know, new website?
Homework, you're supposed to figure that out yourself.
No, not, or with it yourself or with friends. Alright. That is smarter than you. And I got 9 out of 10 errors. I think it's the 10th one, I think it's something tricky, so that, I don't know if I'm supposed to like, super it, it's all plus, because a bunch of stupid errors here.
I think the 10 errors agree.
All right, guys, we're gonna call it a month and a year. Be back on, checking my calendar, Tuesday, January 4th. And we need a speaker, so give me a ring, give me a hit on the Discord and let me know. Thanks very much. Have a good holiday.